Hey guys, in this video we'll be covering surfaces, surface tools, and what we can do with them. So I've drawn a bunch of shapes, different shapes here, just so we can illustrate some of those surface tools for you. Please feel free to draw similar shapes and follow along and test these tools, because the best way to learn is to actually practice with them. So your tools are conveniently grouped in the sections for what they do. So all of these first tools we've covered so far are all curve tools. Now below those, these two over here, are our surface tools and our surface editing tools. And just below that, we'll find our solid tools and solid editing tools. All right, so let's have a look at some of these surface tools. I'm going to go through them quickly, the ones you'll most often use. And if there's special use cases, I'll cover those in later videos. So if I right-click right there, you'll see these are all the surface tools available to us. The very first one is surface from 3 or 4 points. So let's have a look at what that does. I've clicked on that, and now in my command line it says first corner for surface. Now I'm going to turn on my point snap here, so I can snap to that point there. So I click on the first corner. Now it asks me second corner, so I'll click on that one there. It asks me for third corner, and now it asks me for fourth corner, so I click on that point there. And because I've turned on my shaded viewport here, you can see that that is now a surface. Over here in my perspective viewport, you can also see there is a surface. Now it's a surface because it is obviously gray. But that is not a solid object. It also doesn't have any volume. If you view it here in your front viewport, you'll see it is one single surface. It doesn't have volume. It doesn't technically exist. It needs to have thickness to exist in this world. And we build thickness or volume by combining multiple surfaces. So I'm just going to use this tool on a few more examples to illustrate we don't always have to do 4 points. We could do 3 points. So I'm going to use the same tool, surface from 3 or 4 corner points. And now you'll see if I click on this point, that point, and this point, and I hit enter or right click, it becomes a surface. There we go. So we don't have to do 4 points. We could do 3 to make a triangular surface. Let's move on to the next tool. So next up is the surface from planar curves. Now that part in the name there, planar curves, is incredibly important. Planar meaning, if I look at my front viewport, it is flat. They are all on the same level. That's when that tool works. If it doesn't work, your surfaces aren't planar. So let's have a look at what that tool does. I want to select the surface from planar curves. And now you'll see it says select planar curves to build a surface through. Now I'm going to try these. There's a line and there's a line. I select those two and press enter, and it does nothing. And the reason for that is because the surface from planar curves tool only works on closed curves, not open curves. So let's do that again. Surface from planar curves, and I'm going to select that curve there, which is closed, and I hit enter, and there I go. I have a surface. But the surface from planar curves tool can be more complex than that. We can build complex surfaces in the following way. I'm going to right click it to reactivate the same tool, and I'm going to click this circle and that circle. Now watch what happens if I hit enter now. It builds a surface, but it uses both curves, so it creates a surface with a hole in the middle. Now I could do the same thing with curves too. I'm going to delete that one and say surface from planar curves again. Then I could use only the outside circle and hit enter, but now I have a round surface. Now I could, in theory, use this inside curve to then use the trim tool to cut a hole into it. But that's a whole extra step. I could accomplish exactly the same thing by simply saying surface from planar curves and selecting both circles, and there I go. So surface from planar curves can work on multifaceted surfaces as well, like this one. I'm going to do the same thing, right-click to reactivate the same tool, click on that, and there I have a star-shaped surface. Pretty simple, right? Yeah. Let's try the next one. I'm going to skip ahead and say loft. This is actually a fairly complex tool, a very powerful tool that you're going to use very often. So I've gone ahead and drawn multiples of the same 8-sided polygon here. There we go. I'm going to use the loft tool to connect these to build a surface through. So I've my loft tool active, and it says select curves to loft. So I'm going to go from this guy to that guy to this guy, all 3 of them. Now when I hit enter, it shows me these little arrows. Well, that is to show you the direction of the flow of the surface. Now, I'm going to leave them as is. As you can see, I'm just going to use my top viewport as well. You'll see my top viewport. They are all exactly aligned. And you'll also see those arrows are pointing in the same direction. That gives me the flow direction for my surface. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And you'll see it connects all of those surfaces perfectly, but it uses the cross-section curves I selected to build the surface through. I'm going to do that again, but show you something different. So I'm going to right-click to reactivate the same tool, or you can go here and say Loft, select the bottom one, the middle one, and the top one. But I want to edit the flow of that surface. I do that by clicking on a point, single click and let go, and then I move the point to where I want. So I'm going to move it to that end there and click to anchor it there. And the next one, I'm going to click as well and move to the same point. And now I get this, that interesting wavy shape. I also get this dialog box that allows me to edit the shape if I want to. I'm just going to hit OK. That gives me an interesting wavy shape. Well, that's cool. Or I can delete it. I'm going to delete that surface. Oops. I have to get the surface first. Polysurface. No. Oh, I had the tool active, that's why. Select the surface and delete it. I'm going to reactivate the surface tool again, or the loft tool again. I'm going to select the bottom one, the middle one, and the top one. Hit enter. And now I'm going to make them spiral. That one goes there. That one stays where it is. And this one goes this way. So you'll see bottom, middle, top. Now if I hit OK, I create a spiral, which I could use to create screw thread or something similar later. But now I have a spinning shape. Now it's very important for you to know that you should select them in order. If I choose my loft tool and I select the middle one, then the bottom one, then the top one, it'll try and connect them in that order. Well, this time it happened to work, but now you can see it creates this weird shimmering effect, which could be a very bad thing. I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to go middle one, bottom one, top one, and I'm going to just offset these again to create that wavy shape. And you'll see now that's the flow of the line connecting those shapes as well. And it creates this very weird folding in on itself shape. Now that shape, as you can see there, it looks like it's folding in on itself. That shape wouldn't be possible in the real world. It's folding in on itself. That we call a self-intersecting surface. Two surfaces occupy the same space at the same time, and those shapes aren't reproducible. As an illustration, I'm going to maximize this window quickly, and I'll show you. You see how it flows in on itself there. That is very, very, very problematic. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next tool. I'm going to go ahead and say, which one are we working with? Surface from 2, 3, or 4 edge curves. This one's quite handy and quite flexible. I can start with 2 edge curves. I have the option to work with 2, 3, or 4. So I'm going to select this edge and this edge, hit enter, and it creates a square. Just like it would if I selected this edge, this edge, and that edge. But now I have to add 3 extra clicks, or 2 extra clicks. So it's a faster way of doing that. This also works on triangular shapes. So I'm going to reactivate the tool by right-clicking. Click on this one, and that one. Hit enter and get a triangular shape. But it will also work when those curves aren't connected, like in this one. So if I click on this one, and this one, it'll give me that shape, which is pretty much the same as this one, but it doesn't actually connect to the original curves I used to draw it. And then obviously it also wouldn't work on a circle because a circle is one curve only. So I tried to select it, but it won't allow me to. That's because I need to have at least 2, 3, or 4 edge curves. Okay, let's move on to the next tool. And let's have a look. Simple one here is the rectangular plane corner to corner. That way I don't actually need curves. It works exactly like the rectangle tool would have worked with curves. So I can click to define the first point, drag out, click the second one, and I get that shape. That's a fairly boring one actually. Moving along, the Extrude straight is very, very helpful. It helps us design shapes or volumes very quickly. I can literally select any curve like this one and hit enter. But now you'll see I'm able to drag out. And if you have a look here in my perspective viewport, as I drag out, I create volume out of that shape. But it's still open at two ends, so it doesn't have volume yet. Now I could use a tool like the Surface from Planar Curves tool. I'll select all the edges at the top, hit enter, and it creates a surface. Now I'll select all the edges at the bottom, there, hit enter. And now I can grab all of those and say join. And that now gives me an object that has a top surface, a bottom surface, and sides, which means it's a valid closed polysurface. That object is reproducible and 3D printable. I can check that by clicking on the object, going to details, clicking that, and it should in this pop-up window give you the text that says it's a valid closed polysurface. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we want to create. All right, I'm just going to delete that because it's in the way. We'll move on to our next tool quickly. The next one is extrude along a curve. We can be very creative with that one. Just like extruding straight, but we can give it a path to travel along. So I'm going to go ahead and select the extrude along a curve tool. It says select the curves to extrude. So I'm going to select that little square there and hit enter. My next step is to select the curve or path near the start. So I've drawn this wavy line. I'm going to click on that, and it extrudes that square exactly along the path of that wavy line. That's quite helpful. Moving on to the next tool, that is extrude to point. One can also create some very, very interesting tools. I'm going to go ahead and select that one there. It says select curve to extrude, and I'm going to zoom on over to here. I have this polygon, this star shape, but I've also drawn a point directly above it. It's in the middle, but directly above. So I'm going to select the curve, press enter, and now I can extrude in a direction. But I've turned my point snap on, so it snaps to that point over there. And I've created this protruding star shape with the extrude to point tool. Now, let's create some very, very complex shapes. I've gone ahead and I'm just going to quickly delete these so I can get them out of the way. I've created some very interesting shapes here. I'm just going to maximize these so you can see them. Here I've drawn a circle, but I've also drawn two cross sections, this one and this one. But they coincide exactly with the quad of this circle here and the quad of the circle at the bottom. You can see that from the top as well. I'm going to use the sweep one rail command to create a ring. So under the surface tools, over here, there's the sweep one rail tool. I'm going to select that. Firstly, it says select the rail. That's the thing I want to be the track I sweep along. I select the main circle there. Press enter. No, I don't have to press enter. It's already asking me, select the cross-section curve that you'd like to sweep along this rail. So I'm going to select the bottom one and the top one. And you'll see if I hit enter now, it'll give me a similar line and arrows as the loft tool used to. There we go. Now with this sweep one rail tool, if I'm designing this, I need to be very careful to align the parts I want to align. Now I have to make sure my quad snap is turned on for this. I'm going to single left click on that little arrow there, and I'm going to move onto the bottom quad there, and then left click again. Now the inside of the ring should connect to the inside of the ring. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this arrow there and move to the inside quad there too. And the last thing I have to double check is I have to make sure those two arrows are pointing in the same direction. By that I mean I'm going to zoom into here in my front window, and you'll see that that's the top cross section, that's the bottom, and this arrow is pointing right, and that arrow is pointing right. If they're pointing in the wrong direction, all you have to do is left click on the arrow and it flips to the other side. Left click again and it flips back. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my perspective view, and I'm going to hit enter now because I'm pretty much done selecting everything I need to. So I'm going to hit enter, and I get a pop-up dialog box that shows me the options for continuing this ring. But you see how I've created half a ring, not a complete ring. And in order to make a whole ring or a complete sweep, I have to tick the box that says create closed sweep in this dialog box. If I do, it completes my ring. I hit OK, and I have created this whole ring. This will also now be a valid closed poly surface, so I am able to 3D print that exactly as is. So that's the sweep one rail command. But right next to it, I've drawn something very interesting. One rail and two rails. Let's see what we can do with those. Under the surface tools, right next to the sweep one rail tool, I have the sweep two rails tool. Let's give that a go. It says in my command line, select the first rail, that one. Select the second rail, that one. And now it says select the cross sections. So these are the tracks I'll be running my cross section along. So I'm going to select this straight line, this arc, and that arc as my cross sections. And when I hit enter now, it gives me the same dialog box as earlier, but I can now see the complex shape I've created by sweeping those two rails. Now I define the shape here with the shape of my cross sections. So I have quite a lot of flexibility in how I design these. This is an exceedingly, incredibly powerful tool. If I'm happy with that, I simply hit OK. So that's the sweep one rail tool, which I could use for a ring, and the sweep two rails tool, which I can use for this complex shape like that. Now there's one more tool I want to show you, but it's a very interesting one. I've started just drawing some of the shapes I'm going to be using for it, but not all of them. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. I don't need them right now. I'm going to show you in the front viewport. I've created this wavy S shape, but I haven't completed it yet. It's not the final thing we're going to be using. I need to tweak this a little bit, and then I'll be happy with the curve, and then we can draw a very interesting shape. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, and you are familiar with the offset curve tool. So I'm going to offset this curve. I'm going to click the offset curve tool, and I want to offset by a distance of 1.5 millimeters. Hit enter, and offset that. Okay, that gives me that. It's actually a little too much. I'm going to make it 1 millimeter. So I'm going to say offset curve, distance of 1 millimeter, offset it that way. Now that starts to look like what I want, but I'm not completely there yet. I'm going to draw a second line over here that I'll be using as a cutting object. So I'm going to draw that line across there, and I'm going to draw a second line across there. Now maybe a little lower, across there. I'm going to select that line and use them as my cutting objects. And I'm going to trim and cut this midsection out there. Now I can delete these. I don't need them anymore. And I'm going to use my extend curve tool just to bring them out to approximately here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Under my fillet tool, you'll find the extend curve tool. I'm going to click that. It says select the curve to extend. So I click on that line and bring it out just over here. I'm not quite happy with how that's coming out. No, I'm not happy with that. I'm going to try this one. Click that line, bring it out to there. No, you know what? I'm going to flip these over. This is going to work better. I'm going to Control Z to undo those. There we go. I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to use my mirror tool there. And just about here, I'm going to flip those over. There we go. I'm much happier with that. Now I'm going to use a new tool. I'm going to use the blend arc tool to make this line connect with that line fluidly and seamlessly. So under the arc tool, I'm going to go to, where are you? There, blend arc. Click that one. Click on this line, click on that line, and it blends them fluidly and seamlessly. Now I'm going to do the same thing for this one, there and there. Now I don't need that line anymore. I don't need that line anymore. I am going to draw a line straight down the middle here and use that as a cutting tool as well. Select that, trim, cut here, delete that line. And I think you might be able to hint or guess at what we're trying to do now that you see this shape. I'm going to use the blend arc tool again. Blend arc. And I'm going to blend this one and that one to connect them. Same here. Blend this one and that one to connect them. And lastly, I need to join these. So I'm going to select them all and say join. And now I'll finally use the surface tool I wanted to show you, but I need all of my viewports to do it. So I'm going to maximize bring up all of my viewports again. And I'm going to say under my surface tools, I'm going to use the revolve tool, that one right there. So I need to define what I want to revolve first. So I select these, hit enter. Now it says start of revolve axis. To revolve, I need 2 coordinates to spin around. And that's why I cut these off squarely here with a straight line. So I'm going to click on this end, click on that end. And as I drag up, you'll see it is an exactly straight upright line due to ortho being on and having cut them straight that way. And then next up, it says I can now enter the revolve angle. So I'm going to go up to my top viewport, start here, left click once, drag around, but I'm going to make this visible up there for you so you can see what we're actually doing. I'm going to drag around, and as I drag around, you see it creates a surface out of that cross section. And now you know exactly what we're making. We're making a wine glass. What we did was, in our front viewport, we defined the cross section for the wine glass. And now in top, we're revolving around to create the entire full shape. Once I'm there, I left click again, and I'm done, so I right click. And I've created a nice, complete, valid closed wine glass. Lovely. Those are the surface tools you'll be using very often. And we'll be mixing and matching those quite a bit to create very interesting shapes. All right, lovely. See you in the next one.